The moon has awakened with the sleep of the sun. The light has been broken, the spell has begun. Yes, it's my favorite time of year again. Halloween is almost here. Here are some creepy stories to keep you spooked for the season. Welcome, fellow chill seekers, to Lady Grimm, where the veil between our world and the unknown grows thin. Welcome to Lady Grimm, where the paranormal comes alive. Too close. When I was 16, my friend Clara and I decided we were too old for the whole trick-or-treat thing and set our sights on a real scare. A haunted house about an hour away with a wicked reputation that drew people in from all over our state. When we arrived just after 10, the place was already buzzing, as you'd expect on Halloween night. The line to get in snaked its way around, almost to the dark field that was the parking area. We ran into a girl from school that we knew, Raquel, who was with her friends, and we waited in line with them. We chatted and laughed, trying to keep the spooky atmosphere from getting to us, which was hard thanks to the scare actors who would sneak up behind everyone in line. As we waited, I realized my phone was missing. I ran back out to the dark, desolate field where Clara had parked, but I couldn't find my phone in her car. As I closed the car door, I saw something that made me freeze. At the end of the row of cars, a tall person in a mask was standing in the dark, just watching me. I didn't expect any actors to be out here this far from the haunted house. I laughed at myself for being so nervy and said loud enough for him to hear, "You scared me." But when he didn't respond and just stood there, silently watching me, I slipped around the far side of the car, choosing a different path back. When I looked back, I saw he was trailing me, but keeping his distance. He made me so uncomfortable. I almost broke into a run, but told myself I was overreacting and tried to keep my cool. I was relieved to get back to the group. When we finally made it to the entrance, a sign warned us that scare actors might chase but not touch us. Pretty standard stuff, and I thought I knew what to expect. Raquel's group went in first, and then Clara and I were called. Inside, it was dark and disorienting as we followed the path deeper into the house. After a few turns, we were faced with 4 doors. But before we could choose a path, scare actors popped out and chased us through them, splitting our party and closing the doors behind us. Us. I thought Clara had been right behind me, but when I reached back for her in the darkness, a strong hand gripped my wrist tightly and yanked me backwards. It must have been pure adrenaline that let me break free. I bolted, and as my eyes adjusted to the new space, I realized I was surrounded by boxes and costumes and old doors. I wasn't in the attraction anymore. I was backstage. Panicking, I turned and saw the figure from the parking lot, his terrifying masked head cocked to one side, standing motionless again in the dark, facing me. I darted through the clutter, and I could hear him following me. I squeezed behind a stack of boxes, my heart pounding, hoping I could hide and go back the way I came. I crouched there in the darkness, listening to the screams echoing from other groups walking through the haunted house just a few feet away. I waited, holding my breath, until I heard him run past, his footsteps fading deep into the attraction's backstage. After a few long minutes, I retraced my steps, creeping back through the door I'd entered. I sprinted straight past other people in the attraction until I burst out the front door and beyond into the parking lot field. But Clara's car was gone, and I had no idea where Raquel and her friends were. Panicked, I asked to borrow a stranger's phone, and I called my sister, who came to pick me up. I didn't tell her about the person in the mask. The next day, I confronted Clara about why she'd left me behind. She showed me a message on her phone that said, "Go ahead, I'm staying with Raquel." She thought I had ditched her. It wasn't until then that I realized the person who chased me had not only stolen my phone, but had also been close enough to our group to hear our names. We called the haunted house and described the person and their mask, but they said they didn't have anyone working the attraction that fit my description. Graveyard shift. Working the graveyard shift at a big box store isn't anyone's idea of fun, especially on Halloween night, but I needed the paycheck. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., prime Halloween party time, but not for me. The storeroom was a maze of merchandise boxes that needed to be cracked open and pre-assembled for the in-store displays. When I punched in that night, there were a few display pieces left over from the day shift. There was a giant inflatable turkey, a raggedy Halloween clown slouched in a corner, and a doorway arch that read, "Happy Fall." A couple of other display items needed to be assembled, and I figured I'd get them set up first, and then bring everything to the storefront as a group. As I cut open and emptied box after box, my cardboard pile was growing, and I had to go out to the recycling dumpster. We weren't supposed to, but I propped open the back door to make the recycling trips more convenient. On my fourth trip back inside, I noticed something odd. The clown had shifted forward and was now positioned peering around the boxes at me, its black eye sockets facing me. "Very funny, guys," I called out, assuming one of the other stalkers had snuck back there to play a Halloween prank on me. I went into the store to see who had done it, but found out the other guy that was scheduled to work with me had called out. I was the only one working the stockroom that night. Walking to the back, I found the clown back in its initial position, propped against the boxes again. I stood staring at it, wondering who would have moved it. Then it happened. The black eye sockets snapped open, and two terrifying red eyes stared directly at me. I stumbled backwards as it let out a horrifying laugh. My instincts kicked in, and I spun around, bolting for the store manager's office. When I explained to her what I'd seen, we searched the stockroom, but the clown was gone. Whoever, or whatever it had been, must have slipped out through the back door I'd carelessly left propped open, never even triggering the alarm. The police were called, and after they searched the store and found nobody, they told me it was probably a Halloween prank. Later that night, my manager remembered the security cameras on the outside of the building. The footage from the back parking lot showed me as the last person to leave the building with the cardboard, but there was no sign of anybody else. The Visitor. I live alone and don't go out on Halloween. Not because I don't want to, I do. I love Halloween. But I don't go out mostly because it's like amateur drunk driving night. Instead, I stay in and hand out candy to the kids that live on my block. Over the last few years I've lived here, trick-or-treaters start ringing the bell around 7, just after the sun goes down, and I usually get 7 or 8 rounds of kids before the night dies down again. I usually watch a scary movie and keep only the glass door closed so I can lean way back from my couch and see when kids are walking up the sidewalk. I keep it spooky though, the lights are all out and I have candles burning by the door. But last Halloween, something happened that makes me want to go anywhere but stay home on Halloween night. It had been raining, so fewer kids came to my door than other years, but I still had quite a few march up to the shelter of my covered door, hoping for some candy. When the doorbell rings became less frequent, I knew it was time to shut down for the night. As I drew my door shut, I saw a young woman standing in my front yard, watching me close the door. She was wearing a long black robe, and her face was partially covered by her hood, so I couldn't see her very well. I did notice she was barefoot, which was strange considering it was raining, and she didn't have a candy bag either. She stood watching me from beneath her hood, and when she didn't approach the door, I leaned into the house for the candy bowl and set it out on the front step, closing the door behind me. Maybe she was waiting for someone. I don't know. I settled back into the couch to finish my movie, but just a few minutes later, I heard a banging sound at both my front and back doors at the same time. It was so loud and hard that the doors rattled on their hinges. This went on for about a minute straight. I was frozen on the couch, unsure of what was going on or what to do. I was afraid to go to either door, but also afraid of what might happen if I didn't check. As I leaned forward to stand, I saw the reflection in the TV of a dark shape cross the room behind me. Before my brain forced me to turn around, I heard the sound of the rain falling more clearly. I got up and ran to the hallway between the front and back door where I had seen the reflection. Both doors were wide open, and outside the rain was falling hard. As I looked towards the front door in the direction the figure had moved, I could see the fading outline of the same young woman in black retreating into the night, gliding towards the darkness beyond my street lamp. Gliding. She wasn't walking, she was gliding. That's when I noticed that despite the heavy rain falling, the woman had left no wet footprints on my hardwood floor. The landings outside my front and back door, both sheltered from the rain, were bone dry